to item, no, since we did 5.1 yesterday, we're going to start with item 5.2, our reports from our Vice Chancellor on community college contributions to jobs and the economy. Van, welcome. Please introduce your guests and proceed.
I will. I'm going to kick off a little bit, give a little bit of background, and then I will introduce our panelists today. I missed our time together in July because I was on vacation. Hopefully all of you were able to catch some good vacation. But lots have happened since doing that, our last time together with regards to jobs and the economy. One of our projects, which was an investment in innovation, was recognized by the Clinton Global Initiative America for its out-of-the-box thinking in trying to bring large employers to the table in terms of aligning their needs with that of education. Manuel Baca's good friend, Secretary Solis, had also appointed me to represent, to be a member on the National Committee on Apprenticeships, which allowed us a voice and insight into that additional world. And then, as you saw in the Friedman article, that turned out to be the #1 most emailed article from the Sunday newspaper. So the topic is very, very much top of mind for America. And it also got the attention of key partners that we care about here in California. Mike Kearse, as you know, of the California CDE's Board of Education, emailed me about that. Alan Zarenberg, who is CEO of the California Chamber, emailed me about that article, as well as Neil Struthers, who's actually up for election as head of the building trades of the for the Building Trades California. He's up for to head up that organization, and as you know, the building trade is the largest of all the unions in California. So these are sort of the complexity of the constituents that we deal with on the workforce side, and it is great to have them engage in the dialogue and to have the credibility imparted by Tom Friedman. By the way, I shared with him that my 10-year-old was most impressed that he saw his mom's name in the paper. And he emailed me back that he was so glad to impress a 10-year-old. So let me go to the next slide. So today we have a case study for you. As you think about policies and policy misfits and where the needs are in terms of the jobs, the skills, and what we do in terms of core competency of education and training, what we wanted to provide you is a case study to help inform the policy discussion. And we picked one in the area of allied health. And you've heard us present in the area of healthcare before. But in allied health, no matter what chart you look at, there's jobs on the other end. The growth is there in California, but also across the country. And this case study is also one where you have the large union of SEIU, United Healthcare West, on the same page as the major healthcare employers, including the Kaisers of the world, the Dignity Health, which used to be called Catholic Healthcare West, the major hospitals. So they are the employers paying into the training trust that SEIU United Healthcare West manages on behalf of all the employees. So it's a good case study because here we have the alignment of big union as well as the major employers on the same issue of workforce. And it is also an important one because it is about career pathways, the prerequisites and the career pathways. Because in this area of allied health that we're talking about, it's those who get the training have access to the job. It is about access. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, if you don't get the training, you will not get the job, right? The training is a prerequisite for getting the job. So as we think about access, and this is really the policy discussion, what we wanted to do is give you a case study here about how to, here's an example where real jobs are, and what do we do about that? So I have three panelists here. You all have met Linda Zorn before. She's our sector navigator, statewide initiative director for the healthcare sector. With us also is Catherine Swenson, and she's our expert in contract education, and that's often the side of the house that employers go to in order to have more rapid response to their workforce needs. And then I'd like to also introduce Valerie Lewis, who is the project director on this, and she has undertaken the research herself, a nurse in background, and she's done the due diligence that we're going to share with you today. And this project fits into quadrant 4 of this framework. This framework is the Doing What Matters for Jobs and Economy framework that we have been sharing with the system and doing 12 critical conversations with the field. And it's a framework that starts with give priority to what matters to jobs and the economy, which is basically, listen to the regional labor market needs as you prioritize programs, courses, and budgets. Secondly is make room for what matters in jobs and economy, which asks us to retool programs that are not working or not serving the labor market needs so that students can study what matters. And when we say what matters, it would be to give priority, make room so that we could give priority. Third is student success matters, and this is all the work that you've been doing in the last year that we will echo in terms of the metrics and momentum points. And then last quadrant, this is innovate what matters to jobs and economy. So this was the quadrant where we got recognized for a project by the Clinton Global Initiative, and this is a project that this allied health case study sits in. And it's asking us to solve a complex workforce training need so that our system can better serve employers and industry and their incumbent workers. So this is the 4th quadrant, and we're making small investments in these areas to better understand where is it difficult? Where do we have policy misfits? And this is why we're bringing this case study to you at this time. And at the end of this, when we tee up the question, I would also like to invite Member Ramos and Member Malumed, who sat through the EdPAC Advisory Board discussions to share any thoughts they had before we open it up and large. Okay, so let me turn it over to the team.
I'm up first, Linda Zorn. So as Juan mentioned, the healthcare industry in our particular case study provides an excellent example of the Doing What Matters framework. And again, that first part of the framework, the give priority, is really about considering the labor market. And this quadrant is about evidence, and it's about data to demonstrate workforce need in a sector. And you all know healthcare is a very mature sector, and therefore we have been collecting and analyzing data for very many years. For example, you've got the OSHPD clearinghouse that's fairly new, that's providing an array of data around the workforce needs in healthcare. You've got the CWIB looking at data, of course the UCSF Center for Health Professions, as well as LMID, our centers of excellence, and the list goes on and on. So we have a wealth of data in healthcare pointing to one thing. There's a lot of need out there for healthcare workers. For example, for many years, health has been one of the initiative levels of the Economic and Workforce Development Program, and it's one of the 10 on the list for continued investment to the 13-14 year. I think it was summed up quite well last week by Richard Holden, who was one of the regional commissioners of the Department of Labor in San Francisco office. He was speaking at a statewide convening of healthcare experts last week, and he said this: healthcare is the most important, significant industry in the U.S. right now. The most significant industry. I thought that was a pretty strong statement by a DOL representative. And he was talking about the combination of both new workers needed in healthcare and replacement workers. And it's that replacement worker that has us concerned. For those of you that were at EdPAC a few weeks ago, you heard Marlene Ruiz from Kaiser mentioning that the average age of nursing is getting scary. Nurses are over 50 years old. We have some in their 60s and 70s continue to work. And once they retire, we're going to see great needs in nursing as just one example. When you get into other healthcare, there's 2 areas of major concern: laboratory services and diagnostic imaging, for examples. And as you know, those are 2 areas of which we use to diagnose many of our diseases and illnesses. The slide that you see in front of you gives some other data, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of other areas as we look at this whole picture of the labor market. The second quadrant is probably one of our most difficult ones, which is making room. I think you know right now that every college across the state is trying to make that decision. What do I keep? What do I get rid of? How do I make room for what matters in my program? I know my college, I'm hosted by Butte College, and we have meetings at what kind of college are we going to be in the future? What are we going to look like? What kind of programs are we going to offer our students? And so how do we factor in the labor market needs into those discussions? And so that's the conversations that are having. And access, again, is the issue, as Vaughn mentioned. All of our community classes are full. Allied health prerequisites are full. Our allied health programs have waiting lists. So we know that employers want their workers to advance. How can we make it easier for employers to pay for advancement and career pathway progression of their employees? They want that to happen. So SEIU, Kaiser, Sutter, they're all on the same page. They want their employees to advance, and they can't find ways to do it with us. So you know what they're doing? You don't want to hear this, but they're going to the private schools. So right now we're seeing contracts being made from those industries with private schools because they can pay and get the access that they need there. So we could make a big impact on the community college system if we could help solve this problem of access for our incumbent workers for these employees. And you might say, well, why are we worried about incumbent workers? As they advance, it creates those entry-level positions. So as we look at a worker advancing into a career pathway, we can create some opening-level positions for our new graduates, because we've heard some of the stories about new graduates not finding work, so it's important to have that career pathway progression. And of course, the third quadrant, making room for student success, well, that's what allied health programs are all about. We have been probably one of the most successful programs if you look at our completion rates. Nursing programs have about a 95% completion rates. The other allied health programs vary, but they're all quite good with their completion rates. So we know that we're helping our students be successful when we get them into an allied health program. So that the items you have on this slide are actually some new ideas that we hear from our industry partners on how can we be more flexible, because that's the request that we get from industry. My incumbent workers have lives and jobs. They don't fit into the normal Monday, Tuesday, or Monday, Thursday, Friday, whatever class schedule at 9 to 10. They want their classes to be more accelerated or condensed, maybe a regional approach. They want something different. They want the classes at a time that meets the needs of their incumbent workers. And so on this slide, we have some creative ideas on what we might do in some pilot projects to help meet those needs of our incumbent workers. With that, I will turn over to Valerie Fisher, who is the director of our Innovate What Matters project. And Valerie, in a previous position, was actually one of the directors of the Regional Health Occupations Resource Centers when we were called that. So we're lucky to have her back working with us. Valerie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Linda. The Innovate What Matters project is a one-year project that, again, is going to be looking exclusively at where the barriers are and weaknesses are and difficulties in serving employers for incumbent worker training regarding allied health. As you know, all of the programs are impacted, and students have a difficult time getting into the programs, anything from their prerequisites that are required all the way through actually applying to the program and getting in to the specific allied health program that they're interested in. That can be anything from, dental hygienist who cleans your teeth, to a physical therapy assistant, to an occupational therapist, to a radiation technologist. There's a whole host of allied health occupations that we all rely on in the healthcare industry. All these people are highly trained, very specifically skilled, and support physicians and nurses in the acute care setting, and now, as we're seeing more and more, outpatient settings as well. The Innovate What Matters is going to be addressing all 6 of the items on this particular slide. And again, our primary focus is to explore the ability of the California community colleges to address the workforce needs of healthcare employers statewide. We've already completed a significant amount of research and gathering of data, and I have these reports available for your preview. If you would like, I can email them to you. We've done research both in interviews with employers and students who have taken classes at community colleges with employer support. And we also interviewed the colleges themselves in their relationship to the employer. So we have data on what works, what doesn't work, suggestions for other colleges that are interested in improving their contract education departments and working with employers. We'll go into some of those a little bit later. We've also done quite a bit of research of online, looking for other examples in other states. What are they doing? How are they addressing allied health workforce needs? I've even looked outside of the United States. And to tell you the truth, there isn't any magic bullet out there that's going to solve this problem overnight. We're we're pretty much a leader in the nation, I think, in regards to innovation and working with allied health workforce needs. We also have completed a complete inventory of all 112 community colleges to see who is offering online prerequisite science courses. Now, all allied health programs require your anatomy, your physiology, your microbiology, and some chemistry. All of those are 4 or 5 unit courses that require a lab component. So we are looking at who has those available and if we can access and increase that amount of courses offered throughout. We've also done some on-site visits to see some innovative programs in action, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. So here are the 4 primary barriers that we've come up with in our research. The first 2 barriers are actually college-specific, and we'll be working with the colleges, again, who are interested in expanding, offering contract education with them in regards to making their websites more accessible to industry, and then hopefully getting some policies and procedures and ways, standardizing ways to work with employers. The 2 most important barriers are barrier 3 and 4, which was a prerequisite courses, barrier number 3. They're impacted, as I said, those courses are impacted, and unless the student has priority registration, they simply can't get into the course. So under best practices, the best way for employers to get their workers into the courses is to contract ed, as we said. But number 2 is the stats from looking at the online courses and what was available. 25% of colleges statewide do offer the anatomy online, 9% offer the physiology, and 6% offer the microbiology. They are hybrid courses, so you could do the didactic online, but you still need to do your time in the lab with each one of those courses, which again, scheduling lab time can be very challenging in a science division. For recommendations on helping this barrier, we'd like to create larger cohorts of different employers across the board to make a larger group of students served at one time through distance education. And then we would like to also, again, work with colleges and see if there's ways that we can increase these course availabilities. Barrier 4 is access to incumbent worker occupational training is limited because the students can't get into the courses again. There's been some creative best practices done with live video conferencing and then on-site skills labs and so forth already in the Bay Area and the northern part of the state for respiratory therapy and diagnostic medical sonography programs. There's also been some work done in the Central Valley with CT technology training at Merced College, working with the WIB and assisting incumbent workers with their specialized training and CT training in that area. We're also going to be looking at thinking about organizing regional centers of excellence based on labor market demands. So for example, in Los Angeles, you could need just radiation technologists, and in the Central Valley or the North, you might need medical laboratory technicians. So we'll try and pool these groups together statewide in order to deliver the education that they need, and then regionally they would have their clinical experiences. Now I'd like to turn it over to Catherine, and she's going to talk about some of the other suggestions we've come up with.
Thanks, Valerie. So as you can see, the wall is there, barriers to access because of the sheer numbers of students and incumbent workers that need these allied health courses and prerequisites. And so colleges have attempted to be creative at how to address these barriers, and we identified 3 areas where we felt these were pretty creative ideas that we would like to start some pilot programs with them on a statewide basis. As Linda mentioned, the imaging programs are very impacted and are in high demand right now, especially in the worker areas. The CT, computed tomography programs, are a higher level, and so if people move into those fields, it does open up areas for them below them for our students to go into those new jobs. Excuse me.
So we'd like to work with Merced College and Long Beach City College, who have created right now not-for-credit contract courses in CT, and try to move those either into a credit arena and offer them regionally through those two programs, and maybe simulate them across the state in different areas. So we'll be working with those. We've already spoken with Merced, and they're very willing to help us to do this pilot project. And we've already identified that employers are willing to pay for these programs. Merced's program was paid for by employers, and the interesting thing about that one was that as the employees were going through this training, they were able to do their clinicals at their employer sites, so it doesn't impact the additional clinical needs of like a large hospital or different healthcare facilities. So that's one pilot that we'd like to try. Another one is to increase the availability of prerequisite science courses for incumbent workers via contract ed with colleges who have the interest and capacity. Now, it's sometimes difficult, as you've heard, SEIU has approached us and said, well, you know, we only have 3 students here and 5 students there, and that's not enough students to warrant us paying for a full class of instruction. So what we would like to do is see if we can somehow bring those cohorts together, those small groups together, maybe through distance learning or through online learning, and have SEIU support those programs with funding, but we could then address those needs of the smaller cohorts around the state. So it'll take some coordination, and right now it's difficult for SEIU because they're trying to contact 8, 10, 15. I think at one time they said they were working with 52 of our colleges, and that's a logistical nightmare for them. So we're going to try to help facilitate that with them and to identify where those cohorts are. And this is also not, you know, something that's just for the SEIU Ed Fund, but will also help other employers who are facing these same challenges at access to the college system. And then we'd like to facilitate a regional or statewide incumbent worker allied health program with sequence cohorts via distance education. I know that sounds like, what does that mean? And actually, the 2 programs that Valerie went and visited were partnerships between 2 colleges, Santa Rosa and Napa Valley College, shared the same curriculum, offered it via video conferencing at the 2 sites. They had an instructor at both sites, and the students who participated in those courses, and these were done through contract training, the students who participated went back to their, again, facilities, their own workforce facilities, so they weren't, again, impacting the clinical sites, and they were able to utilize the same curriculum. The students received credit for those, but they were paid for by their employers. So those are some of the ways that we'd like to try some pilots to start at least helping some of the incumbent worker access issues. As you probably are aware, capacity is created by funding in our system. Of course, the state apportionment is our largest resource and our largest source of funding for programs. We get quite a few grants. The healthcare initiative is excellent at obtaining grants and addressing the needs of the incumbent workforce and also creating new programs. And then employer paid, certainly where it's appropriate for employers to pay. We've got examples of how Sutter Health partnered with Sacramento City College to create a whole program at Sutter Health because they couldn't get their employees into the courses, so they said, well, we'll just create our own at the site, and they've done that, and they've paid for all of that, and there's other examples like that as well. And then, of course, students pay some of the fees. We, you know, as you know, we don't charge differential fees. We can't charge the student the direct cost of instruction. But what happens, as Linda's already pointed out, is when they can't get to us and can't utilize the community college system, they do go to private schools. And those costs become very high for the student worker and also for the employer who's trying to support those students in completing advancement education. So our challenge is, and this is our challenge to you, and we'd like to have a little discussion, is how can we increase student access to allied health pathways when dealing with impacted courses compounded by unusually high regional and statewide job demand? So that's our challenge. That's the challenge we're trying to address, and we'd love to hear some of your ideas of how we can do that. Henry, do you have any comments?
Thank you very much. Board members? Member Baum, followed by Member Ramos.
I just want to get to that issue. You talked about access and increasing access and getting the resources, because the irony for me is that when the students are driven to private institutions, that's made possible largely through public funded loans.
Yes.
And so there is public support for sending students to private institutions to get this access. And so we don't have if we could expand our resources available to increase access, it actually probably will save the system and save the public money, because a lot of those loans get students into a economic situation that's unsustainable, that they often end up, they have I believe, higher rates of default on those loans that we end up suffering from. So that's something I think we need to make the case publicly to say the investment that we would have in these programs to increase access would actually yield wise financial benefits to the state when it comes to educational resource investment.
Yeah, may I make a comment on that?
Yes,
Am I allowed to
Go
comment back? You're absolutely correct, and our employers would prefer programs from community colleges for one other reason. Oftentimes, the graduates from the private schools don't have the same level of competency and skills that they may have coming from a community college program that has accreditation. So the accreditation issue is a huge issue, as well as the competency of the students that leave. So they prefer community college programs from our level of quality as well as our price. But as you know, we are limited on what we can charge a student, whereas if we can do the contract ed approach, then we have the ability to work and really get our fees covered. So that's an excellent point. And as you probably are familiar with some of the national work that's being done to scrutinize those student loans that are going towards students going to private schools. So that's an excellent point that we can certainly work with.
The other thing is, what are also not only the funding limitations for students and faculty, but what are the limitations to roll out some of these programs which are capital intense because they require different types of lab space and things like that? Is there a considerable investment that will need to be made in facilities to offer these types of courses?
Well, in order to add more access, we may have to increase lab size or be more creative about utilizing the labs and those kinds of things. And then, again, as I mentioned, clinical assignments are also at a premium. And so working with incumbent workers is helpful because they can do a lot of their clinical back at their work site, whereas with new students, we have to find them clinical sites that then impacts, that gets harder and harder to do, especially with the student to faculty ratios.
And I also understand that you toured the simulation facilities here at City College, and that is another area that we're looking at, working with our accrediting boards as to what percentage of a student's clinical experience can actually be used in the simulation setting. And there's no defined percentage. It's really all a matter of meeting the competencies that that particular licensing board has established. And there are certain areas, for example, pediatrics and mental health, where it's very difficult to reach those. So we're looking at simulation, and you certainly saw an excellent example of how a student can get a good experience with that.
Member Ramos, followed by Vice President Baca.
Great presentation, and Vaughn and team, I think that you're doing some of the most important work in thinking that we need to have in motion for our continued relevancy going forward, not just in the healthcare space, but in every other domain where we're going to need to see and support economic growth in our state. On the matter of the question that's been posed, I think it's pretty much what I've heard you say and what you've been saying. We need to increase our responsiveness to industry workforce realities. We need to increase the relevancy of the workforce training that we're providing to our students, given the types of trends and evolving needs that we're going to see in the labor market going forward. I had, as Vaughn indicated earlier, the opportunity to attend my first EdPAC meeting several weeks ago, which was very impressive to me. We had a robust conversation about many of these issues and approaches. I think it is an essential and good new direction because I do think it inspires a different slant, a different emphasis in the kind of discussions and work that we will be doing around that table and I think that Member Malumed may have her own thoughts on this to follow up with. In that context, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is a much more focused and strategic region-centered approach to the work, a greater business and labor leadership engagement and orientation to partnership with real players in the real economy, much more concentration on growth sectors that are specific to the needs and the realities of the state, and all the associated enterprise and labor market trends. So just a much greater grounding in what's happening beyond the corridors of our campuses and districts to be responsive in the ways that I started talking about at the outset. I think, not to be crass, but to be practical, it is not just imperative that we expand our dialogue and our partnership and our responsiveness relative to business and labor because it is good for our students. That's first and foremost relative to our mission. But frankly, I think from a budgetary standpoint, to come back to Catherine's point, it is essential. We need more allies and advocates, more constructive lobbyists on our behalf to indicate that the product of our investments are really valuable to them in a way that encourages them, inspires them, motivates them to speak to state leaders who oversee our budget decision-making to say, this is not something that is voluntary, this is essential, not just from the standpoint of the mission of the community colleges, but from the standpoint of our interests in the labor community and in the business community. So I think that both from a moral and mission-based standpoint and from a practical and political standpoint, this is where we need to be. And I will just close by saying that I too have been kind of loosely following trends in the international political economy and looking at what competitor regions in Asia and Europe have been doing, or at least talking about in recent years. And there too you will see much more trending towards targeting the real workforce demands, much more intentionality about public and private sector partnership, much more focus on outcomes, much more supportive education content from early in the education pipeline to lead to careers and jobs that are likely to be the places where people will be employed in the future, and a much greater focus on a flexible, value-added approach to lifetime employability and compensation. So if we can match, meet, and exceed those trends, I think here in California, we can set the pace for what others in other states and other nations will be doing in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Thank you.
Vice President Baca, followed by Member McDougall.
Thank you for the presentation, very informative. I have just a couple of quick questions. In terms of online instruction dealing with labs, aside from the obvious benefits of convenience and facility issues, are there some added accreditation questions that would be of concern, and could you explain those maybe a little bit?
Actually, the accreditation issues aren't in regards to the college itself's accreditation, but the outside accreditation agencies that oversee each allied health program specific. They do have regulations in regards to the what distance education actually means. Some of them require a petition to actually ask permission from the accrediting agency to either expand the number of students they're training per year and or to expand using distance education methodologies. And a lot of the schools that we've already talked to already have those waivers with those organizations, so we're going to be targeting those groups first and then hopefully bringing more on board as we go.
Is it expected that things like maybe lab size, class size would be similar, or is there a variation of it between live and online?
Actually, it depends on how we end up formatting it, but you could have a lot larger group, obviously, doing online with the didactic, and then having smaller groups break out into smaller labs. It's scheduling the lab time and having faculty or a lab assistant there.
So the biggest challenge is the lab
Right.
time.
Right.
If I
But,
could
if they're working, hey, Saturday morning might work great for them, or 7 to 10 o'clock at night might work for them. Where traditionally regular students have them during the daytime hours.
If I could just add, if I could add something to that, we do see this as part of our solution to look at expanding online, but you did hit on some of the challenges, and that is the pedagogical caps that each faculty would have for a course. It also extends to online. So we'd have to really honor that and look at, right now with maxed classes, waiting lists, there's not a lot of incentive to go into the online, which is more difficult. And each college, as you know, has its own requirements on what I need to do as a faculty member to teach online. So we're going to really work through all that and see if online can't be a portion of our solution to reach some more access. I've done quite a bit of distance ed in my work at Butte College, and one thing that we do know is it does increase access, but it's costly. And there's actually an added cost in having an instructor at both sites when you're doing some online and distance ed work. But we do see it as part of the solution. So I just wanted to make that point as part of our comments.
Just one other thing, and this I know is a very difficult question to answer oftentimes with other areas, but in the allied health field, taking the whole of training that's provided in the state, how much of it is done through for-profit compared to the public-funded training? How many cents in terms of maybe just general percentage?
That's going to depend on the actual occupation within allied health. Right now, for nursing, community colleges, we still train the bulk of nurses. When you get into things like medical assisting and some of these other ancillary technologist areas that we don't have programs for, that's when you'll see more coming from the private school. So it kind of is going to depend actually on each individual occupation within allied health. I'm still going to go out on a limb and say that I think community colleges still probably provide the most allied health workers at this point. But there's a couple areas that it's shifting to. For example, the big need in industry right now or the big demand is for bachelor's prepared nurses. And they're now moving toward private schools in that endeavor. And in the diagnostic imaging areas, again, we don't have new programs coming up online fast enough at community colleges, so moving toward private. So any new area, any emerging occupation, that's starting to move more toward the private sector because they have that ability to ramp up much more quickly than we do right now.
I've been trying to get a handle on this thing that Member Baum was addressing in terms of loan indebtedness. How much is it that's happening?
Here's an example. For private RN training at a private school, it will cost the student about $75,000 to $100,000 for a 2-year RN degree. That's really outrageous. The part that really disturbs me is when you get into the lower occupations that don't quite pay as much, like a medical assistant. They can be going into debt $30,000, $40,000, and they get out and they make $10 an hour at their job. They can't repay those student loans. So that's where the real crime is committed, is at the lower levels. Nurses will eventually be able to pay it back, but other than that, it's pretty tough.
And there are waiting lists for those $100,000 a year programs.
Thank you.
Member McDougall.
Yes, first I'd like to express appreciation for your presentation. I think you're focusing on a very, very important issue, and that's appreciated. One of the things that I think frequently happens, at least to me as a member of the board, is that there are figures that are put up on boards, and those figures come in and they go out the backside without a sense of the magnitude of what it is that we're talking about. For example, one of the figures that you presented us with today said there would be a need for 1 million healthcare workers by 2030. Now, if you start today and you divide the 18 years to get to 2030, that's 55,000 per year. Now, that's an incredible number, both the total number and the other number. So it gives a sense of magnitude of what we're talking about, and it gives a sense of opportunity of what we're talking about for the California community colleges. The third point is that your focus is on healthcare. But as a board, I think we have to realize, and it came across very strongly with the Friedman article that was passed out yesterday, that this applies across the board to all workers, basically, in today's environment with the technology and the change that is being induced. and the ready now, ready soon, ready, far from ready, those categories are very, permeable and changing all the time. But what they represent is a dynamic that is huge in terms of the workforce. And again, the issue of magnitude and the challenge and the opportunity that is given to our colleges here. The fourth point is I find it very interesting, and I'm not sure maybe why it came up, but you ended your presentation with a question. The question, how do we increase student access to allied health pathways? Now, I thought that was the question you were answering. So I don't know why that comes to us as a question. Probably the worst group for it to come to. It's dangerous for it to come here. It's good for an answer to come here with responses. But more seriously, that question in terms of access to allied health can be expanded rather comprehensively across the board to many career technical education programs, and how do we increase that access? And, I think if there's one issue that, Van, you have as a challenge as a vice chancellor in this area, is how we answer that question in a comprehensive way. And one of the things that seems perhaps somewhat evident from your presentation is that the existing model that has been in place for a long time, that has served this state and the local communities extremely well for a long time, is not sufficient to answer. And that there needs to be a look at other models that can be developed and other approaches that can be developed. And, I think all of us, we could go around the table and pool our ignorance or our lack of scientific findings. For example, start 113th College that is focused on career technical education, that connects to and builds to the 112 colleges, but provides different ways of filling gaps for new training opportunities. So I appreciate what has been presented. Frankly, I would have appreciated more answers to the question, because maybe I missed them, but I didn't get them. And I think it begs the larger question of how we approach career technical education as the system that has the primary responsibility for meeting this need for the state of California. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity, but I'm afraid that our existing model may need a lot of tinkering in order to deliver on the future.
Thank you very much for that observation. I think the dilemma is a very difficult one. And why we teed it up this way is, oftentimes the conversation is about, business should pay, employers should pay, and yet we make it very, very cumbersome and complicated, and we relegate it to the side of contract education. And in the area of allied health, to get into these into these pathways, you need 4-credit curriculum, right?
Right.
You need to stair-step, and if you think about it, you stair-step the prerequisite, you stair-step the pathway, 5 years later you get back in and you stair-step again. So you're stair-stepping between your education. So having it so difficult to earn credit is not doing justice for our students. Making it so difficult for the employers to engage with us doesn't make it easy. Now, the side of the house that normally engages with the employers is the contract education side. And that side, our EdPAC CEOs were sharing, that side is terribly impacted as well. So these personnels who are supposed to be on point, to play point with the employers, they're going, the costs to sustain those headcounts are also in jeopardy. And so one of the ideas that the EdPAC had recommended is, can we regionalize the structure for contract education that would make it easier for the employers, but also none of the particular colleges would bear all the costs of sustaining that infrastructure. But then you would need to enable that structure to have a lot more of the flexible components that Member Ramos talked about. So doing the online, doing the, the planning for online but clinical, doing the sort of some of the flexibility and more responsiveness, but designing it in a way that students can stair-step and continue to stair-step into the employer so that the employer can help pay for the education and training, especially as the state divests in this area. We need to figure out how to make it easier for employers to pay. I'm sorry, Member.
Member Malamed.
I was just going to thank Member McDougall. I love the way you bring it all together and think of it, because you're right, it's not just this field, it's all of them. And the EdPAC meeting was a very large group. I was kind of surprised about it. Could it be 36? It's very large. And I would like to share there was a lot of praise for our Vice Chancellor bringing it together and talking about how are we going to solve these things, because we think we're nimble, but we're not that nimble. And just like you said, business will pay, but now we have to be able to accommodate that. So I learned a lot there. And as you said, our model needs change. So this is one of those ways that we're working on change and trying pilot projects and seeing how they go, and also how businesses work together and how they are willing to help their students get back in. So I found it very instructional.
Member McDougall.
I'd like to at least put on the table for consideration. I think this entire area of career technical education is one of the most important and one of the most dynamic, and one that is, because of its importance and its dynamism, one of the most challenging in terms of how we approach it. I think under the leadership of the Chancellor, the issue of student success, following a model of a year-long study through a comprehensive task force of business, college leaders, academic senate, union representatives, et cetera. It put a focus and put the time and effort at looking at a problem where you could bring in researchers, look at ideas with a comprehensiveness, and develop a program from that where there was a level of support that I hope in 5 or 10 years will make a tremendous difference for the students entering our colleges. I think there may be potential in this area as well, and I would like to think that there is grant money that would be readily available that would enable the largest system of higher education in America to look at this in a comprehensive way and come back with a series of recommendations, certainly that considers allied health, but considers all of career technical education as well. So,
Okay, Chancellor.
Thank you, Member McDougall. This is a difficult issue. There's no question about it. And let me tell you, you mentioned some of the barriers, and I'll highlight some more barriers. Number one, our decentralization. We are talking about a need, but that has to be expressed at the individual campus. Whether we're talking, increasing the number of allied health courses, increasing the number of training slots, et cetera. That has to be done at the local level. We can encourage it. And our funding model is inadequate. We presently reward colleges on the basis of full-time equivalent students. That means if you're teaching a course in history, which doesn't require a great deal of equipment, and you're teaching a course in nursing, you get the same compensation from the state of California. It's at least twice as costly. So our funding model is got to be looked at. And I was a little disappointed when I looked at some of the figures when we began to reduce course offerings. We did some things that I think we cut back on non-credit. And of course, as all of you know, that was a recurring theme that I tried to preach all up and down the state. We no longer can offer these personal enrichment courses, as good as they may be, when we're actually pushing students out who are seeking transfer or career technical education. So we cut that, and that was an encouraging sign. But our drop in career technical courses was just as sharp as in, and that was distressing. And I know probably, in a few cases, maybe they were getting rid of some career technical courses that were no longer contemporary, and that made sense. But a college president who's wrestling with a budget is tempted to cut back on career technical education because it is so costly. And so we have a dilemma here, and I had that dilemma even back at Pasadena City College. And I refused to cut the nursing program, as expensive as it was, because I thought it was so important. And so when we had to cut courses, we didn't cut the nursing program. We cut some other areas that were not as well subscribed or did not contribute as much to the community as I thought our nursing program did and some of our other career technical programs. But we've got a funding problem. The state does not fund career technical education. When I was in the Senate, I did get a bill through that gave some additional money to the nursing programs. But, you know, those kind of things play out in time. So we've got to look to maybe change the funding model. And that's a question, and maybe we, just as we tackle the whole area of student success over a year's time, maybe we need to form some kind of study of career technical education and come up with some meaningful recommendations and act on them. And one encouraging thing I've seen about this Student Success Task Force is we're actually trying to act on it. We've had some studies in the past where they looked real good on a shelf, and nothing ever happened. So all I'm saying is, and of course I'm departing, so somebody else will have to pick up this ball, but this is I tell you, out in the public, there's a great appreciation for career technical education. When I would go out and speak to audiences, when I began to talk about things like nursing, auto tech, construction, firefighting, you name it, people saw that those, and we've got the statistics to prove that those are good paying jobs. One statistic that stuck in my mind was that within 3 years, when somebody gets a certificate from a California community colleges, their wages almost double. Their wages before that were below the median in California. Then after that, they're above the California median. So we are terrific in terms of workforce, but we've got some underlying problems here. Contract education is a possibility that we could develop a little bit more. That is, you get companies or you get the military or whatever to pay for these courses, and we don't get apportionment for them, but the cost is borne by somebody else. And we've done some of that, but maybe we need to be more aggressive about that. Unfortunately, I'm identifying some of the problems, and I'm not coming up with the solutions. But I think the solutions are there, and I think there's enough sympathy out there and enough feeling for career technical education that we could tap it. But we've got a funding problem. There's no question of that. And we've got beleaguered colleges. Suppose I'm a president of a college, let's say in the Central Valley, and I know they need nurses, and I know they need construction workers, they need all of this. But I've got, suddenly, the state says, and if we don't pass that tax initiative, then the state's going to say to us, you cut your budget by 7.5%. Well, you know, somebody can come in to me and say, let's increase our nursing program. Let's increase our radiological technology program. Or let's increase our emergency medical technician program. And I'm looking and saying, well, you know, the only choice I've got around here is to cut this budget by 7.5%. And that's a tough time there to suddenly face all of that sort of thing. Because everywhere you cut, there's a squeak. Somebody's upset. Why aren't you offering those courses? I get letters after letters of somebody who said, My arthritis was so much better when I had aerobics for seniors, and now they've cut the class out at Glendale or someplace. The whole petition, like I could change the thing. So I'm just venting a little here, but I'm trying to highlight the problem, and I'm suggesting that maybe this fine presentation that we have and the leadership that Von Ton Quinlivan has given to this, maybe we can awake something out there and get some funding, but we've got a terrific product. We can improve it, but we've got a terrific product. But we have some serious problems in how to solve it.
Okay, I'd like to make a couple comments here, and then we will move on. First of all, thank you all for the presentation. Very, very well done. I like Member McDougall's suggestion that we take a focused look at this and maybe kind of shine a light on this, if possible, through a task force of some kind. And then you ask the question, should we have legislation behind that? Is it something we should do? What does it look like? And then where does this fit in the scheme of things with the new chancellor coming on board? Having said all that, funding is part of the issue, a big part of the issue. But as I understand it, and I was talking with Vice President Baca, even though if we have the funding and it went through contract education, we have a problem with credit, getting credit, right? So we don't.
Some.
You can do that.
We can do credit through contract ed as well. It just doesn't generate apportionment. But there are requirements around that.
Right, but if it's funded elsewhere, you can get regular credit, just not apportionment. Okay, so that's one thing to look at. And then the other issue is, what problems do we pose as a system to people if they did want to fund it? What sort of things, because I hear that a lot too, and I'm distressed by the amount of dollars, even locally here, going to for-profit institutions, right? Some are good, some are bad. But what I hear from funders, and I'm around funders a lot, is that as somebody said here, it's a lot smoother. So are there things that we can do within our system that helps that along? So I think there are a number of things to look at there, and maybe Member McDougall, I will work with the staff. I'd like to agendize this again for our next meeting, and I'd ask everybody to think about these various issues, how we would do that, and I'll ask Steve or whoever is appropriate here, maybe to give us some options in terms of what a task force might look like, and what are the best options around that, because I agree with you, it's a really, really important issue, and I think we need to be a lot more aggressive than we are in terms of going out and doing something about this. And I think this board could send a very good signal that way, that we got your back. So,
I would like to build on your earlier comment, President Himmelstein. I think the key variable affecting the community colleges and the leadership of the colleges for the near future is the appointment of the new chancellor. And personally, I would present this as an area of great interest on the part of the board, of great need on the part of the state of California, and seek from the chancellor his or her sense of priority, sense of direction, et cetera. That would be my recommendation anyway.
Right, I would agree. Okay, we'll do that, but let's maybe get some options anyway to share. Vice Chancellor.
I thank you for your comments and for your leadership. And as Member McDougall pointed out, it will take that level of courage as we begin to open up this Pandora's box. Everything from the pricing, the differential pricing issues, to credits, and to all of our regulations. And so it will take your fortitude to be able to transcend over to the next leadership, the big shoes that Jack's about to vacate, because we need that consistency if we go forth with this task force.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.